Chapter 7. Life's Most Important Choice. As the five of them proceeded through the door to the fourth trial, it seemed to be the same as the previous trial. They passed through the door as they would any other door on earth, and, when they entered, they found themselves in a tunnel which seemed to lead to the next trial. However, shortly after entering the tunnel, the surrounding area changed. The tunnel before the group faded away, and instead, the group was now in an inside forest. But there was nothing special about these trees. Whereas many trees tend to be knotted and have bends and sagging branches, the trees here had none of those features. These trees seemed to be perfect and unblemished. They had a sort of warm glow about them. As for the group, when they arrived in this forest, they did not all arrive in the same place. They were split into three groups. James and Dan arrived on the east side of the forest, and Howard and Jade arrived on the west side. When Simon arrived in the forest, he noticed that there was a great density of trees in his immediate surroundings, which led him to conclude he was closer to the center. James! Dan! Jade! Harold! Can anyone hear me? Simon called, but there was no response. Just how big is this forest? And why does it look familiar? I better move towards the outer edge to try to find the others. Meanwhile, James and Dan were scouring the east edge of the forest and calling the names of the other three. James paused to look at the trees. There was a mist between them that reduced the visibility to just the outer edge of the forest. You know, these trees look very familiar for some reason. It looks like the Forest of Light, where I fought Caractacus as Thunderman, the fusion of myself and a Thunderbolt. And Simon fought his greatest rival, Galacticus, also known as John Mystery. But this could not be that forest, since Agravania was destroyed in the other timeline, and does not actually exist in this one, James said. Do you think maybe we should try to going deeper into the forest to try to find the others? Asked Dan. It's possible that they landed on the west edge. If our friends are smart, and I do believe they are, they will not try to find us by going deeper into the forest, because this fog will make it very easy to get lost, James explained. And so, they continued scaling the east edge of the forest in the northward direction while calling the names of the others. Meanwhile, on the west side, Harold and Jade were also calling the names of the others, trying to find them. Do you think maybe we should try going deeper into the forest to try to find them? Asked Harold.
This fog among the trees would make it nearly impossible for us to find them. Not to mention, we might end up getting lost ourselves. Then if we go around the outside of the forest and call in the others' names, we'll find which section of the outside they are closest to, and we can guide them to us.
Jade replied. So, similar to James and Dan's plan, Harold and Jade scaled the edge of the forest from the west side in the northward direction. Simon began to move towards the outer edge of the forest, continuing to call out the names of the friends that were with him when he suddenly heard a familiar female voice which he could not place.
You're going in the wrong direction. Your friends are already making progress towards meeting up with each other. So worry for them not, he said.
You sound familiar, but I'm sorry. I can't remember who you are, Simon replied.
You mean to tell me after all these years you've forgotten me? Your first love? She asked playfully. It's me, Megan, your wife from the other timeline.
Then, Megan's tone became serious as she said,
This trial was designed specifically for you. You must make your way to the center. A great friend of ours awaits you there. I know you'll do great.
After that, a beam of light starting adjacent to where Simon was standing illuminated a path to the center. Simon followed the path, and after a short while, at the end of the beam of light, he saw a great tree that glowed brighter than all other trees in the forest. As he looked upon the great tree, a peculiar yet pleasant sensation washed over him. It was as though the tree was resonating with his soul. This spot felt like home to him. So, you have finally arrived, Simon Petrus, came a man's voice from behind Simon. Simon turned around to see a man in a brown robe, with a hood over his head, though unlike the figure on the monitor in the previous trial, this man's face was visible. It, too, was a face familiar to Simon, a kind, battle-worn face with a weary expression upon it. If you do not recognize me, allow me to reintroduce myself. I am John Quibius, one of the three Quibius brothers who assisted in the governance of Agravania. Our eldest brother, Josh, leads the people. The second eldest, James, is in charge of public relations, and I command our military forces, John explained, as he moved to stand next to Simon. I am also the guardian of this trial you now face. Do you remember what tree this is before you? Do you know why you feel so at home before it? If you have forgotten, I will tell you. This tree is that from which the sword of your soul, the sword of unity, originates. It is also that from which the other trees around us originate. Yes, we stand in the midst of the forest of light. The name of this tree is the bonding tree of friendship. However, the trial you now face has nothing to do with the forest or this tree. It is not but a meeting place for you and I. Now, follow me, and I shall take you to the trial's true location. John opened a portal and stepped through it. Then Simon followed suit. After he passed through the portal, Simon saw John at a fork in a road, standing between two tunnel paths. Your trial has naught to do with weapons or physical enemies. This trial is a spiritual trial. I am sure you remember Matthew chapter 7 verses 13 through 14 in the King James Bible, which states, Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. Many there be who go in thereat, because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. You have two paths before you, and you must choose one. You cannot proceed between the paths. Only one of these paths will allow you to move onward towards your goal, John explained. The left path, though so wide that one could stroll through with ease, had an ominous and treacherous look about it. Along either side of the path ran rivers of fire, and the walking path was very narrow and rough, with no life to be seen for as far as Simon could see. The right path, however, was very narrow, though not so narrow that he could not walk through it. The path was smooth, and there were flowers growing on either side of it. To the right of the walking path was a thin canal that carried the clearest water Simon had ever seen. Fish were happily swimming in it. It should have been an obvious choice for Simon, but as he began to approach the right path, a voice came from the left path.
You're not going to go down that lane path, are you?
Asked a familiar female voice from the left path.
If you come this way, you could be with me. We can have all kinds of fun together.
Simon looked towards the left path, and instead of the treacherous path he saw before, he saw a bedroom, and a beautiful woman to whom he had once been physically attracted to, wearing little clothing and sitting on the bed in a suggestive position.
I also have your favorite foods, which I could feed you if you like.
The woman said as she presented a silver platter with both chicken wings and pizza, and with a sultry inflection.
We can do whatever you want in here.
Simon could not do anything but stand frozen in indecision. He knew the path that he should choose, but the other path was just so enticing. Meanwhile, James and Dan were approaching the northernmost part of the forest from the east side when they saw that Jade and Harold were doing the same from the west. James! Dan! Oh, excuse me.
James! Dad!
Jade called as she spotted them. Jade! Harold! Dan called as he spotted them. Where's Simon, though? James asked the other group. We thought he was with you, Harold said. The four of them looked towards the center.
He must be somewhere within. What is this trial? Are we even in it yet? Is Simon facing it alone?
Jade asked. Whether that be the case or not, we should keep him in our prayers, James replied, and pray that he finds a way to come out on top. Before the two paths, Simon still stood frozen in indecision. He then closed his eyes in self-reflection. A familiar warmth came over him. It was the feeling of knowing that Jesus Christ was with him, even in his darkest hour. A verse from Psalms 23, verse 4, came to mind. Yet though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me. I am sorry, Jezebel, but I cannot go with you. Though the path you chose is what my body may want me to take, I know, in my soul, that I need to take a different path. In fact, I had already taken a different path from the world when I was baptized in the name of Jesus Christ for the remission of sins. It is written that He is the way, the truth, and the life. This fork is a metaphor of the choices we make daily. The left path represents the things that we want to do that go against God, and the right path is the path of Christ, which will bring us nearer to God, Simon said. At that point, the fork faded away, and Simon and John were in an empty room. Well done, my boy. You have passed the trial. It seems you realize that this was more of a lesson than it was a trial. What you may, what you may not know is that this was not the trial of the great foe you are proceeding towards had intended. If it had been his way, you would have fought another of your greatest rivals, one who is known as the Winged Duke. The Father intervened and made the trial into the one you just faced, John told Simon. If that's the case, then why does he not stop the calamity entirely? Simon asked. Alas, dear boy, I do not know. No one can truly know the will of the Father, save He alone. Perhaps it is His will that He stop this calamity by working through you rather than for you. It may be that He wants us to trust in the aid He provides. Speaking of aid, I have something for you from Him, John said as he took something from under his robe and handed it to Simon. These beads are a family heirloom of yours, of which my family has been a guardian since the beginning of the multiverse. It is time they were returned to you. However, let no one know that you have them, including your friends, and use them only in your greatest need of them, for many of them are once in a lifetime use. Simon took the small purple felt bag of beads and opened the bag. The beads within glowed a contrasting shade of purple. Simon then closed the bag and then asked, "How do I get back to my friends?" "Step through the portal which you came from which you came here, and you should be able to see them. Farewell, Simon Petrus. I shall continue to pray for yours and your friends' safety and victory," John replied. Simon put the bag of beads in one of the lower pockets of his cargo pants and stepped through the portal. When he returned to where the forest was, he saw that the trees had disappeared. He saw that his friends were waiting for him on the other side of the room, by the door to the fifth trial. After he greeted them and met up with them, the group proceeded through the door. Meanwhile, in the realm where the intended fourth trial was meant to take place, the winged duke was waiting for Simon and his friends. Eventually, he realized that they were not coming, and he became enraged. In an angry growl of a voice, he cried,
Simon Petrus, how dare you stand me up? I will find you and take my revenge, and I will destroy everything you care about.
He then stormed out of the room and went to try to find Simon and the others.